Thank you for joining us today on Uptime Logistics, powered by CAP Logistics. I'm your host, Doug Draper, with the Denver Transportation Club and Acme Distribution. We have a couple of guests in today from Los Angeles that are Skyping in, Pat and Mike Gamel with Mexpress out in California. So, gentlemen, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So our topic is going to be about Mexico cross-border transportation, a little bit about the USMCA rules that have just come into play, and really get a better handle of what it's like to move product trans-border, north and south into Mexico, and some of those implications for consumers and companies that are involved with that level of trade. So one thing we like to do before we really jump into it is learn about our guests. So I figured age before beauty. So Mike, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got in the industry.
Well, I started when I was 19 years old with a company called Yellow Transit. So I applied as a manager when they were going to open up a Fresno terminal. And I kind of cheated a little on my age. Instead of 19, I told them I was 29. And they hired me as a branch manager. And then when I was 24 or 25, I opened my own intra carrier in California. And then 22 years ago, we started Express transportation in and out of Mexico.
Awesome. That's great. So how many lies did you tell in your career, Pat? Looks like we got one from Mike over there. Tell us about yourself. Yeah.
I'm a trucking brat, so I worked at my father's trucking company as a child. Well, child labor, there you go. And so out of high school, my spring breaks, winter breaks, that kind of stuff, summer vacations, been doing this trucking thing my whole life.
Yeah,
so
good.
I came over to Mexpress about 2.5 years ago.
So talk to us about how things moved in like the 1980s and how transborder happens in 2020 and maybe some of the similarities or differences that are out there right now.
That's a good question. Actually, until the 1994, there was not an LTL structure in Mexico. Everything moved as full truckload. So they deregulated Mexico in 94 and started little regional LTL deliveries. Prior to that, anything that would go to the border, clear one pallet, was a truckload rated beyond. So today's market, they have a very good LTL system in Mexico, intra-LTL. The process for the border clearance and the crossing is pretty much identical with the exception of the additional computers electronically tied to the Mexican customs. But other than that, it's the same process.
Gotcha. And we'll kind of get into the actual movement of the freight because I'm pretty simple, so I like to say what happens here, here, and here. So we'll get into that in a minute. But one thing I was thinking we could do for our audience is talk about maybe some key terminology. The supply chain logistics industry is notorious for acronyms, right, and different terminologies. So is there 3 or 4 terms that we may be used in the show here that we want to clarify so our audience knows when we use them again, that we kind of know what they are?
You want to try that one, Pat, or you want me to do it?
You're the better speaker. I'm going to shut this thing off.
Okay.
Cool.
There's a couple of them. One of them is the maquiladora that everybody's heard about. Over the years. They're now called and referred to as an IMEX company. And what they are a manufacturing company in Mexico that brings parts in, does something to them, maybe final assembly or whatever, and then ships them back out. So it's a temporary import, and there's no duties and taxes on a IMEX Maquila program.
Okay.
The other one would be probably a pedimento. Pedimento is like our freight bill. It's what the Mexican broker, when he inspects the product, classifies it, figures out duties and taxes. He issues a pedimento now electronically and pays that to the Mexican government. Mexican government then stamps it paid, sends it back. It's got the trailer number, it's got the commodities, the value of the product, and that has to be carried by the Mexican carrier to destination. Has to be on him at all times, or if he gets pulled over and he doesn't have it, he gets confiscated. Probably definitivo, that's definite freight. That's freight that's going to go into Mexico, be consumed, and that will have 16% EVA tax on it. There could be duties as well, but it will always have 16% EVA tax. And I guess the other one is just real simple, is a Mexican broker. And we should go into that a little down the road, you and I, or us, because the Mexican broker is completely misunderstood and nobody understands what his process is. And I think that's a good one for them to know.
So that's a temporary inbound and outbound. How long is that valid for? Is it like this is valid to have product come in and be reworked for a day, a week, a month, indefinitely? What's that look like?
It depends on the commodities and the manufacturer. Normally it's for a year, year and a half, could be year and a half. The Mexican broker keeps track of everything that's on an IMEX or a Maquia program that goes into Mexico and that same product that comes out. So maybe you could only import 1 million widgets in a year's period of time. The Mexican broker says, okay, they've just imported 300,000 or 300 total so far. Now they've just exported 300,000, so you can still get your million.
Gotcha. So one thing about Mexico and the international trade in general, with all the tariffs, people are talking about what's your plan B and contingency plans, because you make your widget over in China or Indonesia or something, and with the tariffs, people are trying to reshore, right, and find new places to manufacture. So what type of commodities or what type of industries are focused in Mexico? Because you got people making, hey, I'm going to make a bag or a shirt, and now I'm going to move it down to Mexico. But I know there's some traditional legacy businesses that are really hone in on in Mexico. Talk to us about what maybe 2 or 3 of those are.
Electronics are huge. You've got lots of computers being built down there. Computer racks, anything having to do with computers. Most of the stuff is put together down there in some form or fashion. So we're doing a lot of movement of computer products in and out of Mexico. Parts in, finished product out. Same thing with automotive. I'd say those are probably the 2 largest.
And aerospace.
Yeah.
Aerospace. Gotcha. So aerospace would be airlines and manufacturing engines and fuselages and things like that?
Okay. And airplane parts. And it's Mexico's pretty much broken up or segregated by the different areas. For example, electronics will be mostly in Guadalajara, Mexico. That's where the origin started with them. They're now going over into Aguascalientes, a couple of the electronics company. But the automotive is in what they call the Bahia area, which is another area that they go to. And your Chihuahua is more for your aerospace. El Paso.
Gotcha. And did that just naturally happen because the workforce just has a history with manufacturing there, or are those different provinces unique and provide something different to those industries?
No, I think it's more just the workforce, like you said.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about an actual shipment, right? Maybe we could use an automotive part to kind of have the audience understand the different touch points and the documents that flow with it, so we can kind of get our hands around it, because there's a lot of, like I said, nomenclature, and it can get kind of confusing on how things work. So let's just say there's some raw materials for the automotive industry. They're going to go down to be assembled and then come back. And let's just say that piece originates from Dallas, Texas, right? So walk us through literally the transit time. Like, it starts in Dallas, and then, where would it go? Where would it cross? And then where does it go to the factory? And then let's kind of backtrack it. So I just gave you a shipment, and here's some stuff in Dallas that needs to get down to Mexico for some automotive parts. Walk us through that.
Okay. So we're gonna move it by truck, and let's say it's gonna go to Mexico City, as an example. Okay, so the normal carrier would make the pickup. He needs to know who the Mexican broker is for the importer, the consignee in Mexico. He will deliver the shipment overnight from Dallas, as an example, to the Mexican broker's warehouse on the United States side.
Okay.
That Mexican broker will then unload the trailer. He will inspect that product. He will classify it. He will count it. He will make sure everything is correct. If it's a IMEX or Maquia program, he'll make sure that those are all, they're exempt from duties. But if for some reason they needed a computer at that office, he has to inspect that. Oh, there's a computer. There's 16% EVA on that because they're not registered to import that under the IMEX. Once he finishes that, the Mexican broker, he will then commit and do the border crossing himself with that trailer. Or if what's happening today, it used to be a lot of the U.S. carriers were providing trailers to go into Mexico. It's changed now. It's the reverse. But let's just say they're going to use the same trailer. So they load it back into the trailer in Laredo, Texas. The Mexican broker does. He crosses it to the carrier, the U.S. carrier's partner in Mexico. And then it's going to take, it's about, by a single driver, about 28 hours to get from Laredo to Mexico City to deliver the freight.
So, excuse me.
That's the normal process.
That's the normal process, not our process.
That's not our process. That's the process as everybody else is doing it today.
Gotcha. And that at that transport, you got to unload it, inspect it, move it over, reload it, and ship it out. Is that a 1-day event, 3-day event, to be determined?
That depends on the Mexican broker. It could be 4 days, could be 3 days. It's normally 2 to 3, excluding weekends, because they're closed on weekends.
Gotcha. Yeah, so Pat, you made a good point that that's kind of how this traditional LTL model is, and you said yours is a little bit different. So give us the quick snapshot of how you guys would operate that.
That same shipment, and if it was given to us, say if it was dropped at our drop station in Dallas, we would run it. We actually have trailers that can go through and don't have to be unloaded at the border. So the trailer would go from Dallas, cross at Laredo, and then directly to Mexico City, where then that importer's Mexican broker would then do his due diligence or his job. It would go to the airport. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, at the airport.
Gotcha.
So we're basically leaving Dallas today's Thursday. So we would arrive Saturday with that freight down in Mexico City, which is interesting because,
or it's 2-day transit, yeah.
But interesting because we can get it down there. If that was crossing on Saturday with anybody else, it wouldn't. That freight wouldn't show up. It wouldn't cross on Saturday.
No, because they're closed.
Yeah, that's so it's really like you had said at the onset. It's like an airplane. You just cross the border and go from there. So that's pretty.
And it clears that. Pat just described an LTL shipment. I described a truckload shipment. If you're going to go this old school by LTL, you might add 5-6 days to what I told you.
Yeah. Well, with money tied up in inventory, getting it over there, reassembled or manufactured and back, that's hard. Those days are hard dollars. So I can appreciate the fact that you have a quicker transit. So we talked a little bit about, or we want to talk about the USMCA, right? That's something that's gotten a lot of attention lately, and beyond renaming it from NAFTA to USMCA, it gets a lot of press sometimes, and then it kind of dies down. Talk to us a little bit about your thoughts on how the USMCA is going to be different than NAFTA. Maybe it's not as different as people perceive it to be, and maybe a couple of things that our audience, or if you're a shipper, should know about it now that it's going to be moving forward.
I'm not really that versed in it yet because we haven't seen the whole scenario, but a couple of things. Number one, it made U.S. on a more even keel with Canada and Mexico as far as the goods, the imports and taxes and that. The thing that it really surprised me, and then no one's gotten any news hype on it, but the automotive industries in Mexico are paying about $670 per day to their employees. And one of the things on this program is that they're going to escalate that, and it's going to end up being $16 per hour for those employees. So that's a huge shakeup for Mexico.
Right.
The other thing that's happened is that a car being built, 75% of it has to have parts that have something to do with Mexico, U.S., and Canada, which is about a 12% increase from the old days.
Wow. So you said $6.70. You mean $6.70? Is that what you meant that it used to be?
Per day.
Per day, and now it's going to $16 an hour?
Per hour.
Oh my God.
No one ever said that. You don't see the news media say it. All we heard was that the president would never get it signed. Mexico will never sign it. Well, Mexico was one of the first to have it signed and ready to come back to us. And our Congress people just messed around with it, our government.
Yeah. Interesting. So that's huge. I mean, so as a consumer, I just bought a car that's 75% assembled into Mexico, and the wages of those people putting it together has skyrocketed. Do you see, who's going to absorb that cost? Is the consumer going to be spending an extra $5,000 on a vehicle, or are those costs going to be absorbed in other ways? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think they're going to be spending additional. I think what you're going to do is you're going to see people that are in Asia that have been doing this all the time are going to be doing the nearshoring. They're moving a lot of their plants. Even the Chinese people are moving them to Mexico to be closer to the three of us anyway, to the consumer, the three consumers, US, Mexico, Canada. China had put about 4 years ago, don't hit me on this if I'm wrong,
right,
time, but at one time, China didn't charge you for the containers that were leaving China. So we'd send all the stuff over to China, and then the containers, they would just load them and they'd come out. And now there's a charge. I haven't checked it recently, but for every container that ships out of there, besides the freight charges, there's a $1,500 charge just for that container, or there was. So I don't think with the nearshoring and stuff like that, you're going to see any big change.
Some of the costs will probably come out of the supply chain, I think is what we're thinking. Less distance from the plants. It's nearby here. There's just less cost in the supply chain to make it all happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I'm glad to hear that because I'm in the market for a new car next year. So I'm going to hold you to it. So maybe let's talk a little bit about some new technologies, right? I know, and when I say new technologies, we could either talk about technologies related to documentation flow, or maybe there's some companies out there that are trying to improve the transit time and things like that. Have you seen any new technologies in the last 5-10 years, or even thing that's out in the future that would help, or maybe even have an indirect or unintended consequence to delay things or screw something up?
Well, in Mexico, over a lot of years, because their telephone system was so bad, their ground lines, they were really more advanced than us with their cell phones and computers, believe it or not, because they couldn't depend on their own electricity and their own system. So nothing really has changed much other than the electronics that the Mexican broker is filling out, that pedimento at the border. He's now doing that electronically, as I said, instead of having to type a pedimento, run it over to Mexican to the Mexican customs, get it stamped and bring it back. It's all done electronically. There are a couple of items. We have satellite tracking in our equipment and stuff now. So a couple of companies are trying to come out and testing the satellite stuff that you put on the.
We're actually looking at units. We already track we track the tractors. We have kill switches. We can do all that great stuff with them.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned if you want to put a good viable product that can ride in a trailer, and have its own, jamming, blocking capabilities, and give us full visibility to the trailer more than just the tractor. So we're dealing with a few vendors right now that might make some sense to do that product. We're just trying to find the right one that we know will work the first time.
Yeah.
But there's some people out there that have the tracking that they can put inside the trailer to the boxes. Like with us, we do satellite track the tractor and trailer separately, both of them. And if you open our door on the trailer, you know it. But there's about 2 companies, which is fairly new, that's come out to do that in Mexico.
Gotcha.
To do the tracking attached to the freight.
Gotcha. What about security when you get south? There's always some hype about, the press. Forget transportation. There's always press about security concerns and things happening when humans or products get south of the border. What type of security systems are in place, or even specific to your fleet? You said it's 28-hour drive once you get into Mexico. Is there anything different that you have to do? Is there like a guard that travels with your trucks? Talk a little bit about kind of the trends down there related to security on that final mile?
Well, what we do is a little different than most people because of security. So as Pat said, we're satellite tracked. Most people are satellite now today, both tractor and trailer, but we have a kill switch in the power unit, and it's monitored. That unit is monitored 24/7 from the time the drivers are dispatched, get in the truck and dispatch. We also only run the toll roads, which are the pay roads, and we run team drivers, whereas most of your carriers don't run the toll roads because the U.S. carriers have negotiated the rate down to the Mexican carrier, so we can't afford to run the tolls. The tolls cost us as much as our gas to Mexico City, from, say, Laredo to Mexico City. They're as much as our fuel. So those type of things are what we do, and then we'll pick a spot, like right out of, say, Querétaro. From Querétaro into Mexico City, we escort everything into the Mexico City airport from Querétaro, or from Mexico City to Querétaro once we get past Querétaro. I think one of the biggest secrets that we do, when that Mexican broker issues the pedimento at the border, that pedimento has to have the trailer number that is going to be in Mexico. It has to have the commodity, the value of that commodity in the trailer. And once he hits that button to send that to Mexican Customs, the cartel, everybody's going to know that. So that it's a place, if the cartel wants it, they'll say, oh, look at this. When it gets halfway there, we'll just grab it because that's the trailer number.
And they see every one of them at the border that's declared.
Yeah, they have a record because it has to have that trailer number on the pedimento to be in Mexico. With ours, our pedimentos are cut to the airport, so we're going under the radar. We look like we're air freight, so we're invisible on that.
Gotcha. Yeah,
I'm not trying to sell our company on.
No. That's the whole point of the show, is have people understand options and how things are developing with border transport. So
the best nugget from a security standpoint, and all the things that they can do on purpose, kind of a thing. That turned out to be something we found was a byproduct of our process. Was that basically invisible at the border, so you can take a valuable load and no one else knows it's even going because it's destined for the airport.
Yeah,
I guess that's one. Now that we're talking about it, the Mexican seal, the seal is put on the trailer at the border that's clearing, can be broken anytime en route by a police or the military officials. And what they normally do, they'll break them, they'll get up inside and pick a couple things and say, go on your way. They'll check the guy's paperwork to make sure. With ours is a bolt seal that's part of our in transito program to the airport. It cannot be broken by either Mexican custom, or it can only be broken by Mexican custom. It cannot be broken by the military nor by the police en route. If there's an issue with that equipment and they want to check it, they have to send the message to the destination airport, because that's the only guy, Mexican Customs, that can break our trailer seal.
Got it. Yeah. Interesting. Talk to us about some future trends, right? We started with, hey, things in 1980, pretty much look the same paperwork-wise and that nature. Let's fast forward now, 5-10 years out. Is there any, in your opinion, what are some trends that are going to be developing related to cross-border transit?
I don't think much is going to really change because the Mexican broker is such an important part of the whole deal. And they like to be at Laredo because they get their in and out charges, their warehouse fees, their border crossing fees for the trailers. I think if anything, you're going to see more of the liability come off of the Mexican broker at the border and be shared with the importers of the product. Right now, if that Mexican broker makes a mistake and he doesn't classify it, or he leaves an extra box and he gets a red light and he doesn't classify it correctly, or there's an extra box that he didn't sell, it could be an empty box. He could lose his license, which is his old business, and it could take him a year to get it back, and it could cost him up to $1 million fine. And I think they're going to start sharing that more with the importers in Mexico.
Gotcha. So the financial liability piece of it, is that when you say liability? Because I'm thinking, okay, some guy just lost his job. I don't know how they'd be able to get their job back. Is it more the financial aspect of it?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Financial.
Good. Well, what are some resources out there? You guys have been doing this trans-border business for quite a long time. What are some resources? If I'm a company and I'm looking to nearshore and I have questions about, hey, I found the right factory in this part of Mexico, and I want to learn more about the process, the rules, the regulations, the tariffs, things like that. What type of third-party resources are out there for companies to be more knowledgeable?
You have CAP Logistics. I think they're located in your area as well.
Yep.
But, yeah. But you've got CAP, you've got the Mexican Brokers Association, where you can ask questions. You've got the freight forwarders are getting a pretty good understanding of it, your international forwarders. The local, what do you call it?
Yeah, the World
Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, Chamber of Commerce. I know that here in Denver, the World Trade Center, it does a lot of work. The World Trade Center Denver does quite a bit of work in that area. So that's another great resource. So, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. As far as today, I think we've done a good job of kind of overviewing not only what you guys do and how it differentiates from the competition, but generally some of the terms and how things flow in and out of Mexico. I wasn't sure if you had any parting comments or anything else you wanted to add to our discussion before we sign off.
I'd like to know why my son didn't input more.
Well, you should have seen all the faces he was making when you were talking.
I know when to let the boss talk.
There you go.
We really appreciate the time and everything, Doug.
Yeah, it's been great. We'll definitely have to get you guys on again. It's going to be, quite a roller coaster and evolution as the USMCA comes out, and you guys are a great resource in that. So I want to thank you as well. And I'd like to thank our audience for joining us today on Uptime Logistics. It's powered by CAP Logistics. We mentioned that a few minutes ago. You can find more information about the show at the description below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. And please visit caplogistics.com for all of your customized transportation solutions.